Good afternoon. I'm Tom Nicholas. I'm doing my presentation for Joy Wiggins 431 class. And my topic is using community resources to enhance English language teaching. And I'm going to start by talking about the difference between ESL, which means English as a second language, and EFL, which means English as a foreign language. So if you're teaching EFL, you're teaching English or whatever language in an environment where the target language is not spoken in the environment where you are. So if you were teaching English in Morocco or English in Japan, that would be an EFL environment. In an ESL environment, you're teaching English where English is spoken all around. So students can go outside the classroom and hear the target language. So if you're an ESL teacher, you've got this resource of this environment that is full of the target language. So I just want to talk about some different ways that English teachers can use the environment, the community, in our case the campus of Western and the community of Bellingham, to enhance their teaching by integrating their students more into the community and also creating meaningful context for their students to practice English. Because one thing Krashen talks about is the importance when you're trying to learn a language of being in a situation that's meaningful where you really have to communicate. So when you're out in the community talking to native speakers, it seems like a natural way to achieve that. So as I was thinking about these different ways that you can try to plug students into the community, I thought there were basically like three basic ways that you could do that. One way is to send students out into the community to perform some kind of task, that they might do that individually or in pairs, like some kind of homework assignment, like that they interview someone or something like that and write up a report about that. Or another way is to take the whole class on a field trip out in the community of some kind. And then the third way would be bringing the community into the classroom. So that might be having a guest speaker come in or having a group of native speakers come in and do some kind of discussion activity. So I'm going to talk about the IEP and the AUAP, which are two ESL programs that are at Western. IEP is a program that has an academic focus. The main purpose of the IEP is to help students improve their academic English so that they can go on and study at an American college. And the focus of the AUAP is a little different from that. The main focus of the AUAP is on bringing students into American culture, American society, and just kind of experience American life. So a little different focus, but both programs in their own ways try to make a lot of use of the community and the campus. So I just want to go through, and I have my little Poplet graphic here that is just giving some examples of different things that both programs do that utilize the community assets here. So IEP is divided into, and I'm not going to talk about every single one, because if I talk about every single one, it'll take too long. But I think you'll get an idea of the different things. Well, I'll just highlight certain ones. And as I'm talking about the different activities, maybe try to think about those three categories that I set out on and think about how each activity fits into that framework of the three different ways. So I think the first one I'll mention is in the IEP, since it's an academic program, there's a program class called Academic Preparation, where the whole class, so these are pretty advanced students, whole class goes into a regular Western class. It's usually a lecture class. We've used anthropology and psychology, Canadian studies. Anthropology works especially well. And they just go into the class. We set it up with a Western professor, and they go to all the lectures, and there's also a support for that, so that the ESL teacher has a separate series of meetings with the students where they go over the lecture and try to understand it and practice different academic skills. So I think that's a good example of you using authentic situation, but you're structuring it in a way so that the input is comprehensible for the students. Another thing we do is we have individual students arrange with a professor. They decide a class they're interested in attending on their own, and they contact the professor and arrange to visit the class maybe one or two times. And Janie Stewart, who's the instructor in the IEP, has had some experience with that So in her high-level listening speaking class, so I just wanted her to maybe talk a little bit about her experience with that.
Yes. This quarter, our students have been attending a psychology class. We wanted to give them an experience with another instructor with a different teaching style and different accent and tempo and the other things that tend to be different in a classroom. So in my academic communication class, I gave the students 2 different assignments. The first one, they had to ask students about their current classes and ask them if they could attend one of the classes with them, and then contact the professor for permission and sit with that student and learn from the student as well as the instructor, make quite a few observations, and then do a presentation. That was a really powerful experience for them.
Wow.
They had so many good things to say about it, and that came out in their presentations. And then the whole class learned from their experiences when they gave their presentations. And then the second time, I had them look up a class that they were interested in on our Class Finder website. And they, again, emailed the professor for permission. And this time, they typed a detailed outline of the lecture and the discussions, because that's one of our learning outcomes.
Right. Wow.
So, positive experience.
So one time the kind of assignment was to give an oral report, and then another time it was a written report.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. And while I have you here, Jeannie, I know that you also have been involved in, IEP has a class called Experience, which is for new students and is to orient them to the community. So,
Right.
and I know you do some field trips with that.
Yes.
So could you just talk a little bit about different things you've done with that?
Yes, we took field trips downtown where they visited a park with a fish hatchery and other interesting things. We visited the public library, the Peace Arch Park in Blaine.
Oh, you
where
were
they
in
were,
Blaine.
yeah,
Wow.
where they were able to walk onto Canadian soil. Plus, at the end of that trip, they came to my house. I thought it would be a fun experience for
Right.
them to visit an American home. And we had some traditional pumpkin pie. So that was a very positive experience for them. We also visited some places on campus here. We had a tour of the recreation center, and we asked questions in the gymnasium. And you mentioned earlier about bringing the community into the classroom.
Right.
We had wonderful guest speakers. We had 2 police officers talk to our students about safety.
Mm-hmm.
The students had some valid questions about whether it's safe to walk alone at night on campus.
Right.
And the police officers were so helpful. They gave them lots of information, answered all their questions, and even showed the students their police car and their equipment.
I bet they like that.
They did.
Yeah. Well, that makes it
That
so
was
much
good.
more real than you just standing up and
Yes.
talking about Western's policy.
Right,
Yeah.
and we had other good guest speakers too, like we had someone from the campus, let's see, representative from the Career Services Center talk to them about job searches and help with resumes and also clubs, all the clubs that are here on campus, because we wanted them to get involved in a club
Yeah.
to help, excuse me, minimize their culture shock, and that was another assignment that we did. They had to either choose a club or a volunteer opportunity or a part-time job, and then do a presentation on their involvement in one of those things.
Oh, that's cool. What, like, do you remember what clubs some students joined?
Well, it is interesting that the ones they chose, because one of the students loves horses and was very involved with equestrian activities in Finland.
Yeah.
So she got involved in the equestrian club.
Okay.
So those kinds of things.
I know what you were talking about, but I
Yeah.
didn't know that she was into horses.
Oh, yeah.
That's great. And then there's also another office on campus called the International Scholars and Student Services, and they work with international students who are regularly matriculating at Western. And they are trying to do a lot now with integrating their students into Western too. And they've started different kind of clubs and groups and they're working with IEP on that. And
2 of their students came and spoke to my experience class because a couple of my students wanted to know more about how they could travel in the U.S. So I thought we would get a few of them to come in and speak about their travels. And it was great. Not only did they give them a lot of information about traveling, but they connected our students to other students on campus from their home countries.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
got
really?
them, yeah, and got them involved
Wow.
in the Facebook group
Yeah.
so that they can make those connections.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, thanks, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention, kind of along the line of the things Janie was talking about, was there's another teacher in the program named Mari Bodensteiner who did a service learning project in her mid-level listening speaking class. And as I've been during this class doing all these, learning a lot about the different resources of Western, there's the Office of Service Learning, which is there, and they're really happy and eager to work with any department or group. And they're a great resource to take advantage of. So Mari worked with somebody in the Office of Service Learning, and the service learning person handled the logistics of it, where she went out and found 5 different placements where our students could do volunteer work, and then students decided which ones they wanted to go to. So 4 students went to one, 4 students went to another, and so on. And one of them, she said, was a local farm, a small farm, and another was the Nooksack Salmon Enhancement, where they plant trees along streams to enhance the environment there. And the students went every week, and they, at the end, they gave a presentation based on their experience, and there was a question and answer session that they held as part of their presentation. So, and when Mari was describing it to me, I said, well, that's really exciting. I said, well, yeah, it was a great project, but she had to do a lot of kind of selling it, because first the students were reluctant to do it, and then as they got involved with it, they really wound up having a positive experience and a good attitude about it. But I thought it was a great project, because you're coordinating with another program on campus, service learning, and getting students out into the community. So I think that's something that we're going to try to work with more and more in the IEP. Okay, so there are a lot of other things in the IEP too. As Janie mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities for guest speakers. Western is just, there's so many opportunities and resources at Western to take advantage of. We're really lucky that way. So I want to go ahead and now talk a little bit about the AUAP. As I said, the purpose of the AUAP is it's somewhat academic. I mean, they're teaching reading skills, and they have lectures that the students attend. But the primary focus is more on orienting them to American culture and experiencing American life. So they do a lot of different things, trying to plug their students into Western's community and into Bellingham. So for example, they have something called the Campus Friends program, where they partner AUAP students with students at Western, and they just go out and have dinner together, or just kind of hang out together informally. And they also have a complementary program called the Community Friends program, where AUAP students are partnered with families or individuals in Bellingham who are just interested in spending time with international students. They also have a lot of guest speakers come in, and for example, AUAP is, all of the students are Japanese. They're all from Asia University in Japan, so they'll have guest speakers come in who are like Japanese nationals who are living in the Bellingham area. One woman is a translator, another guy works in the post office, another guy works in a cannery, so just come in and talk about their experience of living in the U.S. And they also have an interesting program. For one of their classes is called American Studies, and for the American Studies class, they have a series of lectures by Western professors in different departments on different topics related to American society and American culture. And one thing the IEP is trying to do, and the AUAP also, we're trying to find ways to connect our programs more, because for a long time they've been kind of separated. And we realized that in level 3 and 4 in the IEP, we have this class called Study Skills, where students are working on listening and note-taking. And the AUAP lectures are just a really great opportunity for IEP students to go and hear a kind of sheltered lecture that's a little easier to understand than a regular Western lecture would be. So we started experimenting with having IEP students in those classes go and sit in on some of the AUAP lectures. I think that's really been a good thing. The AUAP also, some of the students in the AUAP are business majors, and they have this program called Career Explorations class, where they'll go out to different businesses and different nonprofit organizations and just see that are related to the interests of the students. And I think that's kind of interesting too. Also, they have a program where they take all the classes in the AOAP, go to different public schools, and they spend a whole day in a public school classroom, usually in elementary school, teaching the students simple Japanese words, how to do origami, things like that. And at the same time that they're teaching the students things about Japan, they're experiencing what an American elementary school is like. So I always thought that was a really exciting project. Okay. So, and the last thing I wanted to mention was that the TESOL program at Western has a strong connection with IEP and also with AOAP, and it's a great relationship because it, as they say, it's a win-win situation where both sets of students really benefit a lot. And some of the things we've done with the TESOL program is that TESOL students will just come in to the AOAP or IEP classes as volunteers, and they're native speakers, so it gives a chance for our students to talk with native speakers. Also, TESOL students sometimes have to do a practicum. Well, they always have to do a practicum. So it's like a student teaching situation where the IEP teacher will agree to be the mentor, and the TESOL student is basically a student teacher for the whole quarter in a class. So that's a service that IEP renders to Western. But it's also good for IEP because practicum students and native speaker there in the class, and the students are getting exposure to that. Also, we've done projects with the TESOL classes where it's kind of a pen pal project where students, TESOL student will write a letter to an IEP student, and then the IEP student gets that from the teacher and then writes back, and communication goes back and forth like that for the whole quarter. And that's been a kind of interesting thing too. So there are lots of different ways that IEP teachers and AOA teachers try to take advantage of the campus environment and the community environment in Bellingham. And the more I think about this topic, the more I want to, in my own teaching, try to take advantage of those resources. And I would just like to close by acknowledging my cameraman, Tuan Nguyen.